Naveed says, when did you quit school? So I finished high school for you Americans, or college for you people in the UK. I went to university or college in America, and I dropped out when I was 19 years old. And I can tell you guys the story of why I decided to drop out. I basically was like, okay, I was at university studying a course called Entrepreneurship and Enterprise. And so my intention was to be an entrepreneur. And so I was like, oh, I'll go and do a university degree on that, thinking I was like being smart. So I went to this course. And at the time of going to the university course, I was obviously reading a lot of books. And I was reading a book called What You See Is What You Get by Alan Sugar, or Lord Alan Sugar, as he's known in the UK. And in that book, I was reading it. He's a billionaire. And I was reading this book whilst doing my university studies. And he was like, in the book, he said, the most important skill you can learn to build a business is sales. I was like, that seems pretty critical to me. I'm not going to argue with a billionaire on how to start a business. So the next day, the very next day, I went down to the faculty of business where my tutor was. Because, every student's allocated, like a group of students have a tutor. And his name was Raphael. And I went to Raphael and I said, hey, have you got a minute? I knocked on his office. He said, yeah, no, what's up, Charlie? No worries. And I said, hey, Raphael, look, I really want to learn how to sell. At what point in the course do we learn sales? And he kind of looked up from his paperwork and sort of glanced at me and sort of looked back down and looked a bit confused. He said, well, Charlie, we don't teach sales in the course. It's not in the curriculum. And I was like, oh, I was like shocked, like, okay, why? Why not? And he literally said, well, because all of the lecturers haven't really had their own businesses before, so they don't actually know how to sell. So we just teach the theory. And I was like, oh, okay, no worries. I dropped out the following afternoon. And I went home, like back to my student flat, which was literally a 2-minute walk up the road from the business faculty. And I dropped out the next day. I didn't have a plan for what I was going to do. My first businesses had failed. I had no idea. But I was like, I know that this isn't the way. And sometimes in life, it's not about knowing what you should do, but it's about knowing what you shouldn't and just avoiding it. Because if you're on one path and you know it's the wrong path, if you don't get off that path, then the other path isn't presented to you. Does that make sense? So I was on this trajectory of university and I knew it was wrong. I didn't know what the right answer was. I didn't know what the best business model was. I didn't know what to do or how to start. But I knew that for as long as I was on the trajectory that was wrong, I would never be able to see the trajectory of what was right, because I'd be cornered into this trajectory. So I literally went in and I took him a piece of paper and said, I'm dropping out. And he tried to change my mind and stuff. He was really trying to convince me to stay and hey, but we'll get to that. And, blah, 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 blah. I dropped out. I didn't consult my parents. I didn't consult my friends. I consulted a billionaire, which was, for me at the time and still now, considerably more reliable than anyone else. Because I knew if I asked anybody else, they would have been like, oh, stay. And word of advice for you guys, never take advice from someone who hasn't done what you're trying to do.